Everybody, welcome back. These are the movies that we loved of 1944. Join me as we celebrate the best movies of 1944. I'm Tony, and thank you for joining me at Yesteryear and Today. Let's get started. Andy Hardy's Blonde Trouble. Andy starts freshman life at Wainwright College and gets caught up with helping blonde twin sisters. Comedy, family, and romance. Andy Hardy's Blonde Troubles, another gem by Mickey Rooney. Arsenic and Old Lace, comedy, crime, and thriller. A Brooklyn writer of books on the futility of marriage risks his reputation when he decides to tie the knot. Comedy, crime, thriller, Cary Grant and Arsenic and Old Lace. Frank Capra. Next up we have is Bathing Beauty, a comedy and musical. A contrived misunderstanding leads to the breakup of a songwriter and his fiancée. She returns to work as a gym teacher at an all-girls school. Comedy musical, Bathing Beauty, featuring Red Skelton. Belle of the Yukon, action, musical, and romance. In the Yukon mining town of Malamute, saloon owner John Calhoun and an assortment of shady characters are after the bags of gold dust the miners deposit in the New York Bank. Belle of the Yukon, featuring Randolph Scott. Buffalo Bill, drama and western. The story of William Buffalo Bill Cody, legendary westerner from his days as an Army scout to his later activities as owner of a Wild West show. Buffalo Bill. The Canterville Ghost, comedy, family, and musical. The descendant of a ghost imprisoned for cowardice hopes to free the spirit by displaying courage when under duress. Canterville Ghost. Charles Laughton, Robert Young, and Margaret O'Brien. Casanova Brown, comedy, drama, and romance. In this hilarious romantic comedy, Gary Cooper gets a lesson in diapers and formula after stealing his child from his ex-wife, who was planning to give her up for adoption. Casanova Brown. Next classic we have is Christmas Holiday, crime, drama, and holiday. Christmas Holiday, a young female femme fatale woman realizes that the man she married is an incorrigible wastrel. Christmas Holiday. CoverGirl, comedy, musical, and romance. Rusty Parker wins a contest and becomes a celebrated cover girl. This endangers her romance with her dancing mentor, Danny. CoverGirl. Rita Hayworth and Gene Kelly. Next up we have is Crazy Nights, comedy, horror, and romance. Three goofballs run up against ghosts and a giant gorilla in a haunted house. Crazy Nights. This is a great comedy. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Crazy Nights featuring Billy Gilbert and Howard. Alright, next up we have is Cry of the Werewolf. Crime, drama, and horror. A young woman raised by gypsies hides a deadly secret, which she will do anything to protect. Cry of the Werewolf. Werewolves prowl the earth. Alright, next up we have is Double Indemnity. A Los Angeles insurance representative lets an alluring housewife seduce him into a scheme of insurance fraud and murder that arouses the suspicion of his colleague. Crime, drama, and thriller. Double Indemnity. Next up we have is Dragon Seed, drama and musical. The lives of a small Chinese village are turned upside down when the Japanese invade it, and a heroic young woman leads her fellow villagers in an uprising against these invaders. Dragon Seed. featuring Katharine Hepburn. The Fighting Seabees, drama, romance, and war. During World War II, the U.S. Navy implements a new idea of forming construction battalions that are also fighting units in case of Japanese attack. The Fighting Seabees. For Jills in a Jeep, comedy, drama, and musical. Reenactments of actual USO experiences of its female stars entertaining troops overseas. For Jills in a Jeep. Next up we have is a movie called Gambler's Choice. Action, crime, and drama. The professional gambler Ross Hadley is the owner of a posh gaming establishment in the heart of New York. Hadley's main antagonist is his childhood friend Mike McGlennon, who is determined to ruin him. Gambler's Choice. Gaslight. Crime, drama, and mystery. 10 years after her aunt was murdered in their London home, a woman returns from Italy in the 1880s to resume residence with her new husband. Crime, drama, and mystery. Gaslight. Next up we have is Going My Way. Comedy, drama, and musical. When young Father O'Malley arrives at St. Dominique's, old Father Fitzgibbon doesn't think much of the church's newest member. Going My Way featuring Bing Crosby. Next up we have a movie called The Great Moment. The biography of Dr. W.T. Morgan, a 19th century Boston dentist, during his quest to have anesthesia in the form of ether accepted by the public and the medical and dental establishment. The Great Moment. That was ether, right? Ether. Guest in the House. Drama and musical. A young manipulative woman moves in with her fiancé's family and turns a happy household agent against itself. Guest in the House. Drama and musical. Hail the Conquering Hero, comedy and war. Woodrow is discharged from the military for hay fever, but fabricates receiving a heroic honorable discharge before returning home. Hail the Conquering Hero, a comedy and war movie. Next up we have is Henry V. In the midst of the 100 Years' War, the young King Henry V of England embarks on the conquest of France in 1415. Biography, drama, and history. Laurence Olivier in Henry V. Next up we have a film called Here Come the Waves. Comedy, musical, and romance. Show business twins, sisters Rosemary and Susie, one serious and the other a scatterbrain, join the waves and both fall in love with crooner Johnny Cabot. Here Come the Waves. House of Frankenstein. Fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. A deranged scientist escapes from prison and recruits Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman to get revenge on his behalf. House of Frankenstein. One of the true classics and one of the greatest horror movies of that era. Hollywood Canteen. Comedy, musical, and romance. Two soldiers on leave spend 3 nights at a club offering free of charge food, dancing, and entertainment for all servicemen on their way overseas. Hollywood Canteen. Featuring the all-star cast. I'll Be Seeing You. Drama, family, and musical. A soldier suffering from combat fatigue meets a young woman on Christmas furlough from prison, and their mutual loneliness blossoms into romance. I'll Be Seeing You. Ginger Rogers, Joseph Cotton, and you-know-who, Shirley Temple. It Happened Tomorrow. A young turn-of-the-century newspaper man finds he can get hold of the next day's paper. This brings more problems than fortune, especially as his new girlfriend is part of a phony clairvoyant scheme. It Happened Tomorrow. Comedy and fantasy. Next up we have is Janie. Comedy, romance, and war. Janie is a scatterbrained, high-spirited teenage girl living in the small town of Hortonville. World War II causes the establishment of an army camp just outside town. Janie and her boyfriend get into it. Kismet, featuring Marlene Dietrich, adventure and fantasy. In the ancient Baghdad, Hafez, the king of beggars, dreams of untold riches and of marrying his daughter to a real prince. Adventure and fantasy, Kismet. Next up we have is Laurel and Hardy in The Big Noise, action, adventure, and comedy. During World War II, Stan and Ollie find themselves as improbable bodyguards to an eccentric inventor and his strategically important new bomb, The Big Noise. Next up we have is Nothing But Trouble, a comedy, featuring again Laurel and Hardy. Two bumbling servants are hired by a Disney Society matron to cook and serve a meal to visiting royalty. Nothing but trouble when you have a Laurel and Hardy picture. Next up we have is Lady in the Dark, drama, musical, and romance. Liza, Allure magazine's editor-in-chief, suffers from headaches and continuous daydreams and undergoes psychoanalysis to determine why. Lady in the Dark. So drama, musical, and romance. Next up we have is Laura, featuring Gene Tierney and Dana Andrews. Drama and mystery and thriller. A police detective falls in love with the woman whose murder he is investigating. Laura. Next up we have is Lifeboat. The movie Lifeboat is a drama and war movie. Several survivors of a torpedoed merchant ship in World War II find themselves in the same lifeboat with one of the crew members of the U-boat that sank their ship. Lifeboat. Alfred Hitchcock. Next up we have the comedy duo of Abbott and Costello, Lost in a Harem. Adventure, comedy, and romance. Two bumbling magicians help a Middle Eastern prince regain his rightful throne from his despotic uncle. Lost in a Harem. Next up we have is the comedy, crime, and mystery thriller, Make Your Own Bed. Walter and Vivian live in the country and have a difficult time keeping servants. Walter hires a private detective who has been fired for arresting the district attorney. Make Your Own Bed is full of zaniness and comedy. Next up we have is a classic, The Adventures of Mark Twain. Adventure and drama. The dramatized life of immortal humorist Samuel Langhorne Clemens, better known as Mark Twain, from his days as a riverboat pilot on the Mississippi River until his death in 1910. Marine Raiders, drama and war film. A U.S. Marine major tries to keep his captain on the right track through combat on Guadalcanal, training new recruits in San Diego. Drama and war. Marine Raiders, featuring Pat O'Brien and Robert Ryan. Meet Me in St. Louis. Comedy, drama, and family. Young love and childish fears highlight a year in the life of a turn-of-the-century family. Meet Me in St. Louis. Featuring Margaret O'Brien, Mary Astor, and Lucille Bremer. Next up we have is $1 Million Kid, a comedy film. In raiding the area of muggers, the East Side Boys acquire a wealthy benefactor whose privileged son, unbeknownst to him, has fallen in with thugs. East Side Boys, East Side Kids, and the Bowery Boys. All the same. I love the Bowery Boys. Ministry of Fear, crime, drama, and thriller. Stephen Neal has just been released from an asylum during World War II in England when he accidentally stumbles onto a deadly Nazi spy plot and tries to stop it. Ministry of Fear. Mr. Skeffington, drama and romance. Popular and beautiful Fanny Trellis is forced into a loveless marriage with an older man, Jewish banker Job Skeffington, in order to save her beloved brother Trippy from an embezzlement scheme. Drama and romance is Mr. Skeffington. Mr. Winkle Goes to War, comedy and war. Wilbert Winkle, a henpecked, mild-mannered, middle-aged bank clerk and handyman, finds himself in the midst of battle in the South Pacific. Mr. Winkle Goes to War, featuring Edward G. Robinson. Next up we have is the classic National Velvet, Mickey Rooney and a young Elizabeth Taylor. A jaded former jockey helps a young girl prepare a wild but gifted horse for England's Grand National Sweepstakes. Drama, family, and romance. National Velvet. None But the Lonely Hearts, a film where Cary Grant was nominated for an Oscar but he lost. Drama and romance when an itinerant reluctantly returns home to help his sickly mother run her shop. They are both tempted to turn to crime to help make ends meet. None But the Lonely Heart. Once Upon a Time featuring Cary Grant. A cash-strapped theater producer promotes a 9-year-old boy dancing caterpillar. Comedy, family, and fantasy. Once Upon a Time. Next up we have a classic called One Body Too Many. Comedy, horror, and mystery and thriller. An assurance salesman arrives at a creepy mansion to discover his potential eccentric millionaire client already dead. Instead, he gets embroiled in a house full of greedy, murderous people. One Body Too Many. Phantom Lady. A devoted secretary risks her life to try and find the elusive woman who may prove her boss didn't murder his selfish wife. Crime, drama, and thriller. Phantom Lady. So she's looking for a woman that doesn't exist. Pin-up Girl. We love pin-up girls. Comedy, musical, and romance. A USO singer poses as a Broadway star in order to attract a handsome war hero. Pin-up Girl. Next up we have a movie that is a mystery and romance. 7 Doors to Death. A shot rings out in a darkened apartment. A woman screams and flees, tricking architect Jimmy McMillan into giving her a ride. McMillan returns and finds a body. Was it her? 7 Doors to Death. The Heavenly Body. The neglected wife of a Tweedy astronomer becomes convinced that her astrologer's prediction of a new dream man in her life will come true. The Heavenly Body is a comedy and romance, featuring William Powell and Hedy Lamarr. The Scarlet Claw. Crime, mystery, and thriller. When a gentlewoman is found dead with her throat torn out, the villagers blame a supernatural monster, but Sherlock Holmes will solve the crime. Or will he? The Scarlet Claw. Crime, mystery, and thriller. She's a Soldier Too. This is a drama. Wartime workers deal with homefront dramatics. She's a Soldier Too. This movie captures what it was like living in 1944. Check it out if you can. It's a really, really good movie. She's a Soldier Too. Since You Went Away. Drama, romance, and war. With her husband away to fight in World War II, a housewife must care for their 2 daughters alone. Since You Went Away. Drama, romance, and war. Next up we have Step Lively. Comedy, musical, and romance. Gordon is rehearsing a musical comedy in the penthouse suite of Gribble's hotel on credit. The mounting bill is driving Gribble frantic. Comedy, musical, and romance. Step Lively. Next up we have is Murder, My Sweet. Crime, drama, and thriller. After being hired to find an ex-con's former girlfriend, Philip Marlowe is drawn into a deeply complex web of mystery and deceit, murder and mayhem, and lies. Murder, My Sweet. Tall in the Saddle. A Western. Ranch hand Rockland arrives in town to start his new job, but his employer has been murdered, and the locals don't seem too friendly to him. Who done it? Tall in the Saddle. Next up, we have The Climax. Horror, musical, and thriller. A demented physician becomes obsessed with a young singer whose voice sounds similar to his late mistress. Imagine coming across a woman with the same voice as your mistress. You probably want to kill her too. The Fighting Sullivans. Biography, drama, and history. The lives of a close-knit group of brothers growing up in Iowa during the days of the Great Depression. I believe this is partly based on a true story. The Fighting Sullivans. Check it out. It's a really good movie. Next up we have is The Impatient Years. Comedy, drama, and romance. To rekindle their love, a divorce judge orders a couple whose marriage is on the rocks to reenact their 4-day breakneck courtship. The Impatient Years. Lee Bowman, Jean Arthur, and Charles Coburn. The Mask of Demetrius. Crime, drama, and thriller. Mystery writer Cornelius Layden becomes intrigued after the murdered body of a vicious career criminal washes up in the Bosphorus. The Mask of Demetrius. The Keys of the Kingdom. A young priest is sent to China to establish a Catholic parish. The Keys of the Kingdom, drama and war movie. Featuring the legendary Gregory Peck. Next up we have is a comedy, romance, and war film. The Miracle of Morgan's Creek. Comedy, romance, and war. After an all-night send-off party for the troops, a small-town girl with an awkward boyfriend wakes up to find herself married and pregnant, but with no memory of her husband's identity. Can you believe that? She slept around, got pregnant? So this movie's about slutty. The Pearl of Death. Crime, drama, and mystery thriller. When a valuable pearl with a sinister reputation is stolen, Sherlock Holmes must investigate its link to a series of brutal murders. The Pearl of Death. Sherlock Holmes. The Princess and the Pirate. Featuring Bob Hope. Adventure, comedy, and romance. A cowardly actor and a runaway princess are voyaging on a ship that is captured by a notorious pirate who recently buried his treasure on a secretly mapped island. The Princess and the Pirate. The Story of Dr. Wassel. Action, adventure, and drama. When the U.S. forces withdraw from Java ahead of the Japanese invasion, U.S. Navy Dr. Cordian Wassel coordinates the remaining wounded servicemen and leads them to safety and victory. Action, adventure, and drama. The Story of Dr. Wassel. The Way Ahead. World War II drama that follows a group of British draftees starting with their rigorous basic training and ending with their deployment in North Africa. The Way Ahead. Drama and war. Featuring David Niven. The Invisible Man's Revenge. Crime, horror, mystery, and thriller. An eccentric scientist helps a fugitive from the law become invisible, unwittingly giving him the power to exact revenge on his former friends. I love Invisible Man movies because you can't see what's coming. I love those movies. The Lodger. Crime, horror, mystery, and thriller. A landlady suspects that her new lodger is Jack the Ripper. This movie is good. A lot of suspense, a lot of jump scares for 1944. Oh, you'd love it. It's exquisite. The Lodger. Next up we have is The Mummy's Curse. Action, fantasy, horror. Shipped to Louisiana, the mummy Charis from Egypt roams the bayou, tormented by his forbidden love for Princess Annika. The Mummy's Curse. Looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon. The Suspect. Drama and thriller and mystery. An unhappily married man begins a flirtation with a younger woman. When his wife threatens to ruin her, he decides to take action. Suspect. Charles Laughton and Ella Raines. Next up we have is The Uninvited. Fantasy, horror, mystery, and thriller. A composer and his sister discover that the reason they are able to purchase a beautiful Gothic seacoast mansion very cheaply is the house's unsavory past. So they got some land, some property for cheap, but it's possessed and haunted. The Thin Man Goes Home. Comedy, crime, thriller, and mystery. Nick and Nora head to Nick's hometown of Sycamore Springs to spend some time with his parents. His father, a prominent local physician, was always a bit disappointed with Nick's choice of profession. The Thin Man goes home. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. In the wake of Pearl Harbor, a young lieutenant leaves his expected wife to volunteer for a secret bombing mission which will take the war to the Japanese homeland. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. Drama, history, and war. So this movie is about revenge and payback. To Have and Have Not, featuring Humphrey Bogart, adventure, comedy, and thriller. During World War II, American expatriate Harry Morgan helped transport a French resistance leader and his beautiful wife to Martinique while romancing a sensuous, loud singer. To Have and Have Not. Together Again, comedy romance. A prim and proper widow who has succeeded him as mayor of a provincial Vermont town hires a worldly New York sculptor for her husband's statue. Together Again. Next up we have is Up in Arms, comedy and musical. Hypochondriac Danny Weems gets drafted into the army and makes life miserable for his fellow GIs. He's also lovesick when it comes to Pretty Mary Morgan. Up in Arms, comedy and musical. Next up we have is Bela Lugosi in Voodoo Man, crime, drama, and horror. Dr. Richard Marlowe uses a combination of voodoo rite and hypnotic suggestion, attempting to revive his beautiful but long-dead wife by transferring the life essences of several helpless victims. Voodoo Man. The White Cliffs of Dover, drama, romance, and war. Susan travels with her father to England for a vacation. Invited to a ball, Susan meets Sir John Ashwood and marries him after a whirlwind romance. The White Cliffs of Dover. Wilson, biography, drama, and history. A chronicle of the political career of U.S. President Woodrow Wilson. In Technicolor. Wilson. This is a very good movie, as a matter of fact. And lastly, we have one more movie. It's a crime, drama, thriller, and mystery. The Woman in the Window, featuring Edward G. Robinson. When a conservative middle-aged professor engages in a relationship with a femme fatale, he's plunged into a nightmarish world of blackmail and murder. The Woman in the Window. Those are the best movies of 1944. Those are the movies that we loved of 1944. If there are any movies that I left out from that year that you think I should have covered or I missed, leave those film titles or comments below. And maybe we can do another video on those. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, leave them below. What do you think about the movies of 1944? You see a lot of actors from Mickey Rooney, Mickey Rooney, the East Side Kids, the Bowery Boys, Judy Garland. You see movies from like The Thin Man, a lot of comedy films of 1944. Alright, I'm Tony. Thanks for joining me here at Yesteryear and Today, and I'll see you all in the next video.